Okay, so you see, in addition to being experienced and talented classical actors, they look very good in clothes, and those clothes are wonderful clothes. The whole production actually is very striking to look at, and we should talk a little bit about that. But I want to pick up on something, Irene, that you said, and you put it very beautifully, that the Petruchio and Kate found a way of finding their way in the world together. There's some people, though, that would disagree with that. They would say, well, look, this is a play in which this woman cannot be heard. Shrews were not acceptable at the time, and maybe they're not acceptable in our time. And this man uses techniques that are used to train a hawk in order to subjugate her, to put her in a position where she has to agree with him. And that's not what I get from this production. I do think that this production is terrific because it doesn't step back from the difficulties of the relationship, no. But it's not, what's done is not done thoughtlessly or cruelly. So how did you deal with the whole issue of the taming?
Well, I think we began by looking at the play really with fresh eyes, so no preconceived notions, or that's what we attempted to do because it is such a, it's deemed a controversial play. So I think we began just looking at it scene by scene and trying to figure out what was actually happening in each scene. And there's a great scene in Act 2 called the taming scene. And we realize that he's trying to keep her from eating, from being clothed in nice things. And by the end of the scene, she's eating, she's got the dress, she's got the hat. So we kind of went, wait, hang on, who's taming who, actually?
Yeah. I think there are lessons to be learned, I think, for both characters. And I think that's, Peter came at it with a very large heart and a very huge imagination. And I think we kind of went with his idea that this story is a love story, primarily. I mean, that's how I feel. So I don't think there's anything cruel about it. I think, regardless of whether we like it or not, in this time period, women were subjected to this kind of treatment. Whether we like it or not, that's just the way it was. They were subjected to horrible punishments for being outspoken. And I think we were looking at that as well. Setting it in the period really helps to level that. And I think we... I lost my train of thought.
Well, in the period, I guess being a shrew would have been would have shown a lack of a willingness to be cooperative, right? Now you'd say, well, person speaks their mind, but at that time, balance and unity were very, very important, right? In a marriage.
In order to survive, it's about survival. It's such a harsh period that it's the only way to survive, to find that balance. Because I think Kate comes from a different world than Petruchio. I think Kate comes from a world where things are sort of maybe handed to her a little more easily than Petruchio's world. And he's saying, no, look, this is how it actually works.
But she doesn't want what's handed to her. I guess that's the thing. She doesn't want somebody else to make decisions for her. So she is outspoken. She makes her own decisions. She speaks her mind, which gets her into all sorts of trouble all the time. So I think when they come together, there's a negotiation that has to happen because it is a love story. And I would challenge any married couple to say, we don't have to negotiate.
Right.
I think whether it's 400 years ago or now, there is negotiation, there's sacrifice, there's ongoing cooperation that needs to happen in order for a relationship to work. Yes, the circumstances were very different back then, but still, we see two people who love each other trying to figure it out.
Well, and that's a journey too, because as we began to talk about at the beginning of this webcast, that your intentions at the beginning were very mercenary. You wanted to simply get the money.
Yeah.
And you have, in this production, your manservant is a woman who, you seem to have some sort of sexual relationship with. And then you meet Kate, and you want the money, but then love begins to happen. How does that come about? Talk to me about that.
A small leap of faith. That's how it comes about. I think Lucy's fantastic in the role, and I love having her there. And I think what it adds is another layer of maybe a gentleness that wouldn't be there if Grumio is a man, because I think if Grumio is a man, then it's all just men hovering over this kind of this situation. And I think what it does is Grumio is still a servant within the house of servants. There's a lot of servants in Petruchio's manor, and the sexual ambiguity between Petruchio and Grumio in this production is exactly what it is. It's very ambiguous. So I've kind of left that out of the picture for myself.
Okay.
Personally, but it's such a, it's a great part, and we're lucky to have Lucy Peacock play
Yeah,
the
she's
role,
fantastic. And it's interesting because she's at once there to soften things, to say, in a way, what are you doing to this woman? And on the other hand, you can see, this is what I read into it, and of course the audience is always, what I got was it was also breaking her heart to lose you.
Yeah, there is that wonderful layer. There's also that layer of how women treat each other as well.
Right.
We're looking at a period where women were treated really badly by men. So it's really a very interesting look at how these women treat each other as well. The sister relationship, that servant and master relationship.
And Petruchio and Grumio, I mean, it's set up as well that Petruchio and Grumio, I don't think, get each other. And I think that's why the fight happens, is that they don't, their wits don't play along the same line, whereas Kate and Petruchio's do. So I think it sort of sets up that as well, that it could never work out between Petruchio and Grumio, I guess. Yes.
So to your question about who is taming who, what is that balance of power? At the end, you ask for your wife, the other wives don't come, but yours does. So I guess that's a form of, I'll give you this if you give me that, of cooperation. So I guess that the other marriages, it's not a question of who's tamed who, but they're dysfunctional, and yours has found a way to function.
I think so. I think that's a very good way to put it. And I think they have discovered a loyalty through their mad journey together, where I think Kate would do anything for him, particularly in public. She might get home and say, "Don't you ever do that to me again."
Right. That's interesting.
I think in terms of who they are in public, in the world, they are a team. They've become quite a team, I think, throughout the journey of the play. And I find it really interesting, when you really look at that speech at the end, and I know there's a lot of women out there who still shake their heads and say, please don't say that. But I think what she's saying is, if you offer certain things in a relationship, like loyalty and obedience, friendship and love, fair looks, what you're getting in return, especially then, and in some parts of the world now, is you're getting cared for, you're getting protected, you're being taken care of, maintained is a word that she uses. So I think she's saying, it's not just saying give your husband everything and don't expect anything in return. She's saying if you're a good man, if you're an honest, good man, then you will get in return an honest, good woman. I think that's part of what that speech is about.
And she's obviously no pushover, so in a way, the negotiation, as you put it, to arrive at a balance between the two of you ensures that there is give and take in this marriage. It's not just prostitution on a longer-term contract.
Right? No, not at all.
Right.
No, and in the end, I mean, as Peter said to us one day in rehearsal, most people would love to be Kate and Petruchio, but in fact they're Bianca and Lucentio, which is sort of sad, but probably true.
Okay, well, we won't say that to them. All right. Now, you're within a rep system, and a repertory system means that you're performing other plays during the course of the week. You're both in Romeo and Juliet, for instance, and what's that like, to have such intense parts, such an intense relationship, and yet your rehearsals were interrupted to go and do other shows? Was that difficult? Did it have rewards?
I think it's a joy. I mean, I grew up sort of in the rep system. I was here for 5 years in my early 20s, and then I went to the Shaw Festival for 3 years. And that's the first thing people ask is like, don't you get the characters mixed up? Don't you mix up the lines? And it's like, no, you actually, it's sort of like a respite from the mundane. Not that anything that we do here is remotely mundane, but it's one of the added joys, I think, that we get to play many different characters in the same year.